fellow ink drinkers, and welcome back to the Blind Girls Book Talk podcast. My name is Aria.
And I'm Belle.
And we are two legally blind sisters who love reading and love books. And so what we've done is we've created this show in order to talk about that. We talk about a wide variety of bookish topics, and that can range from bad retellings of stories, book-to-movie adaptation comparisons, buddy reads, recent reads, bookish challenges. Really, the list does go on and on. And today what we're doing is we're doing another one of our book-to-movie comparisons. And we're actually going to be talking about Holes. So, okay. I was in middle school when the Holes movie came out. The Disney Holes movie with Shia LaBeouf and all of those people. And
who the heck is Shia LaBeouf? What kind of name is that?
Anyway, your lack of knowing Shia LaBeouf, we'll just move right on past that. So, of course, I was right in the demographic for that movie. Loved the movie. And I think also around the time it came out is when I had to read it for school as well, because this is one of those books that I had to read in middle school. Loved the book, loved the movie, absolutely was a fan of both of those iterations. And as we go through our different episode ideas, I was like, we really should talk about Holes, because as also kind of a nostalgia thing to see if, it holds up and that kind of thing, and book to movie comparison, all the things. So, of course, I watched the movie again. Belle has yet to see the movie because she doesn't like the movie for some odd reason.
No, I remember watching it up at Grandma's. And I remember being really bored because I just remember it was 10 minutes of watching people dig holes. And I'm like, oh, this is stupid. Let's do something else. And then I got yelled at. And I said, oh, okay. I walked out and didn't come back.
Until the movie was over.
Yeah, until the movie was over and we got to watch what I wanted to watch.
Yeah. So, that being said, I watched it again. It is so good. The nostalgia glasses might be there, but I don't care. They can stay because there are very few stories that can take so many different plot things and weave them together like this story did. And I was talking to Belle before we started recording this, and there are essentially kind of three different stories going on all at in the book, it's kind of going on all at once, but of course it's from different moments in time. Two are kind of from the past, and one then is the present. And so I was trying to think, because of course I'll go first with explaining what the story is and everything. And I was trying to think of how to break this down. And I think the easiest way is to kind of explain what happened in the past first and then go to the present before Belle kind of talks about some of the stuff that happens in the book that might be a little bit different. So without further ado, I'm going to get into it. Of course, spoilers for both the Holes book and the movie. Let me begin. So in I want to say times of the Old West, it seems like. I don't know what time period it is, unfortunately. There was a little town that was called Green Lake. And so, of course, by that estimation, there was a lake. It was kind of this booming little town. There was a school teacher. Her name was Kate. Kate was very beautiful. And so, of course, she attracted the attention of the menfolk. And there were two in particular that she attracted. The first was the son of the mayor of the town. I forget his name, but they owned half the town. He was super rich, good looking. He thought he was all that in a bag of chips. The other man that attracted her attention, his name was Sam. Sam was a person who picked onions and sold them, and he kind of used them as different remedies and such, and he would trade with Kate. Now, unfortunately, with this story and with the time period it is set in, I do have to mention that Sam is black. Back in that time, interracial couples were not a thing. We don't condone that, but I'm just saying that was the where this story was set. So Kate ends up having Sam help her around the schoolhouse, fix up the schoolhouse, that kind of thing. Sam ends up falling in love with Kate, and Kate falls in love with Sam. Now, as I said, with that being a no-no, the mayor's son ends up kind of catching them together one night, and he gets really, really angry, and he kind of brings the town together to destroy the town a little bit because they're mad, and to go after Sam. Again, don't condone this. This is not what should be happening at all. Like, it shouldn't have happened ever, but that was what happened. So, long story short, Sam ends up passing away, and Kate is very, very upset that the love of her life has been killed, and so she becomes an outlaw. And
I'm sorry. That's a stupid reason to become an outlaw. I'm all for someone wanting to become an outlaw during the time this is set in. Not now. Don't become an outlaw now. Don't break the law. That's bad. But back in this time, I'm all for her becoming an outlaw. It's the fact that why she becomes an outlaw is stupid.
I mean, like, there's more things that I want to talk about, but I can't really, to try to keep this as friendly as possible. But anyway, she ends up becoming an outlaw. Her outlaw name is Kissing Kate Barlow. Essentially, she kisses the men that she kills, and she steals their stuff.
I remember that.
Right.
Yeah, what color?
It's like red.
Yeah, I was about to say, isn't it like red lipstick? They're found with like a red lipstick.
Yeah, on their cheek. Or head, or somewhere on their face. There is I'm
pretty sure it's
lipstick stain,
if I remember correctly.
So Kissing Kate ends up also coming across another person that I'll come back to at some point in time. But eventually Kissing Kate Barlow gets old. And so one day she ends up kind of sitting in the desert near where Sam's boat was, because that's where he was killed, on his boat. And she's kind of talking to him essentially. And she's just like, I'm tired. I'm tired of all of this. Well, a guy and a girl find her. They hold her at gunpoint. And the guy is actually the mayor's son. And he essentially is kind of like, all of my money is gone because the lake is gone. I know you have a bunch of money. I want your money. And Kate pretty much says, no, you're not getting my money. I'm not telling you where it is. You and your children and your children's children will be digging holes for ages, and you're never going to get your hands on my loot. You're not going to get what you want. And then she finds a poisonous lizard that will become more important in the present day story. But she ends up letting that lizard bite her, and she ends up dying.
Also a crappy way to die. Well, she died at her own hand, so I mean, fair, but still, a lizard.
Yeah, a very poisonous lizard.
I know, but still.
So anyway, that's curse 1 in this story. There is another curse in this story, and it involves a man by the name of Stanley Yelnats. Or no, that's actually not his name. It was his father. So Stanley Yelnats' father, I do not remember what his name is. I don't know what country he was from, but he was from a different country, where he sees this daughter of this farmer, falls in love with her. He tries to ask for her hand, and her father is like, no, this other guy asked for her hand. He has this really big fat pig. I think I'll accept his offer.
Because trading women for livestock.
Again, we do not condone this. This is what happened.
I don't condone this. I just think this is the stupidest thing.
So anyway, this guy goes to I want to say she's kind of like a wise woman, possibly kind of like not psychic, but like there's something magical about her. Her name is Madame Zeroni. Now, Madame Zeroni tells him, you should just go to America. That's where my son went. He's having a great time. You should go there. And he's like, no, I'm in love with this girl. She says, all right, here's a little pig. You can take this pig up the mountain, make it drink water, and you have to sing a little song to it. Every day you do this pig is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Then, when you win the hand of this girl, you're going to come and you're going to take me up the mountain. And while I drink the water, you're going to sing the song to me so I can get strong again. Dude's like, okay, yep, this sounds like a great idea. So he takes the pig. He does as she says. Pig grows up real big and strong pretty quickly. He then brings the pig to the guy and he's like, hey, I also have a big pig. I would like to marry your daughter. So they kind of have a standoff between the two pigs. And the girl is just like, which one's bigger? And her dad's like, they're both the same. And he's like, so because they're the same, you get to choose. And now, mind you, the other guy who is like asking for her hand is like this big, beefy dude that's like much older than her and seems kind of gross. And like the guy who took the pig up the mountain, he is like, you know, he's about her age. Like he's young, he's good looking. Like, you know, you would think that it would be a pretty clear choice as to, you know, which pig she should choose. So she like looks between the two of them for forever and she's like, I can't decide. I don't know. And so of course the guy who carried his pig up the mountain, he's just like, what the heck? I'm done. You know what? I'm done. I'm angry. I'm over this. I'm done. You can keep my pig as a wedding present. Goodbye. And of course, her dad is super happy because he's like, now I got two pigs, so it's great. So that night, he boards a boat and goes directly to America. So he never goes to take Madame Zeroni up the mountain. When Madame Zeroni gave her little speech about what to do with the pig, she had told him, if you don't come back for me, you're going to be cursed. And he was like halfway to America when he was like, oh, crap, I didn't go back. Whoops. So that is curse 2. Now, that now brings us to present day. Present day, you meet Stanley Yelnats the fourth.
The fourth. And so Stanley, he's like in middle school-ish age. He's 14.
His father, Stanley Yelnats III, he is trying to do something to get rid of foot odor, like create something to get rid of that. And none of his trials work. But he keeps trying. He's an inventor. This is what he's going to do. And anytime anything inconveniences them in life, pretty much they all blame their dirty, no good, rotten, pig stealing great-great-grandfather, who is the guy who carried the pig up the mountain and
didn't carry the lady.
Didn't carry Madame Zeroni.
How dare.
Now, one day, Stanley is walking home from school, and all of a sudden, these shoes just like land on his head. So he's just like, what the heck? And then all of a sudden, the cops surround him. They're like, you stole those shoes. And he's like, no. And they're like, no, don't lie about it. You stole those shoes. They were gone. These are Sweet Feet's shoes, which he's like this major baseball player. You stole them. You're arrested. So they arrest him. They take him to his parents' apartment. And like they see that he's a big fan of Sweet Feet. And so they're just like, yep, he's guilty. They don't listen to him at all. So he then goes to court and the judge says, okay, you can either go to jail or you can go to Camp Green Lake. So Stanley is like, I'll take camp because I've never been to camp before. He's taken to this camp, and this camp is kind of in the middle of a desert. He meets a guy. His name is Mr. Sir. He's kind of like the next step down from the warden of the camp. He's kind of like the right-hand man of the warden. And he kind of looks over the day-to-day and like makes sure they're doing what they're supposed to. He tells Stanley that he's going to dig a hole every single day. And he's going to do it to build character. And they also meet a doctor. I forget his name. But the doctor dude is supposedly like a therapist that is supposed to help them through the stuff. He's kind of useless in pretty much everything. So they essentially tell Stanley, if you find anything interesting, you let one of the adults know. And if it's interesting, they'll take it to the warden. And if they take it to the warden, they might get the day off. So Stanley is just like, okay. And he meets the other boys, and the other boys have different nicknames. Like one of them's nicknamed X-Ray. The boy who left that gave Stanley his place, his name was Barf Bag. There's also another boy, his name is Zero. And Zero doesn't really talk to anybody else, that sort of thing. They also give Stanley a nickname. Stanley's nickname is Caveman. So they kind of go out and they start digging holes. And eventually, after a little bit, Stanley finds a weird little tube thing. So he gives it to one of the other boys because one of the other boys is like, it wouldn't be fair for you to get a day off because you just got here. And he agrees. And so he gives it to one of the other boys. And he shows it to them. And he's like, hey, look, I found something. And so they call out the warden, who is this lady. And she comes out. And she's like, okay, we're going to excavate this area. So they essentially spend like 3 days just like trying to excavate this area to find more things where this little tube was found. The tube was a tube of lipstick, of Kate Barlow's lipstick. But they took it to a different place than like kind of where Stanley found it. So, of course, they never find anything. So eventually they're like, you're going to go back to digging your own holes. So they do. Eventually, Stanley befriends Zero, and he learns that Zero never learned to read. He was kind of living out on his own. He got separated from his mom. He wants to find his mom, but he doesn't have the money to do so. And so Stanley tries to teach him to read, and all the adults get really upset about this. Like, watching the movie again, I was like, why are they so upset about this? But they're super angry. Eventually, it gets to the point where, like, the boys are always kind of like, they're friends, but then they're like at each other's throats, but then they're friends again. And at one point in time, they're fighting again. And Zero ends up kind of attacking one of the other boys on Stanley's behalf. And he ends up running away. So, of course, Stanley's super worried because he's just like, oh, no, that's my friend. I don't want him to die in the desert. So the next day, he tries to steal the water truck to drive to go find Zero. He crashes the water truck. It doesn't go well, but he ends up on the run as well. So he ends up finding Zero, and he finds him at the remains of Sam's boat. And there were some peaches in the boat, like that were in old glass jars that were preserved because that was something that Sam would trade Kate onions for. And so they like drank a jar of these really old peaches, and then they're just like, okay, well, now what? So Stanley kind of looks around and he sees this rock in the distance, and it looks like a thumb. So he's just like, oh, that must be God's thumb. That is something that his great-grandfather, the first Stanley Yelnats, he took shelter there when Kate Barlow stole his money. So, like I said, there's some interchangingness here. So he tells Zero, let's go see what we can find there. So they start climbing the mountain. And at some point in time, he finds out that Zero's real name is Hector Zeroni. So he's like, that's weird.
That's weird.
So,
no questions asked.
Yeah, I don't know if they actually... No, they do know the name of Madame Zeroni. He's like, But they move on. So eventually, they climb up most of the way, and then Zero, like Stanley almost falls, and Zero kind of saves him, but he hurts his hands really bad in the process. And also just like the heat exhaustion and the eating jars of like 100-year-old peaches is not going well for him. So Stanley ends up carrying him the rest of the way up this mountain. When they get to the top of this mountain, it's kind of like this little oasis. Like there's a little bit of water, there's onions. It's just this nice little oasis of like where they can rest for a little bit. So they eat the onions, and they drink the water. And while they're drinking the water and stuff, Stanley is singing the song, the Madame Zeroni song. So then you flash over to the parents, and it turns out that the dad made a breakthrough in this stuff to get rid of foot odor. So he's just like, oh my gosh, we're rich now. We can actually get a good lawyer to get Stanley out. So they do. So a lawyer comes to try to get Stanley, and Stanley's not there. And so the warden, Mr. Sir, and the doctor dude are just kind of like, what do we do? They're like, we don't know. So they try to come up with a plan. Now, in the meantime, Stanley and Zero kind of load up on water and onions. Stanley puts together, he's like, I wonder if that tube that I found was a tube of lipstick. And I wonder if that's Kissing Kate Barlow. I know that Kissing Kate Barlow stole my Stanley Yelnatz's money. Wonder if that's what the warden is looking for. So he's like, I know what hole that I have to dig at. Do you want to go? You want to go, Zero? And Zero's like, yeah, sure. So they make their way back to camp. They find the hole and they start digging. They dig and they end up finding they end up finding the chest. They don't know that it's Stanley Yelnatz's family's chest yet. But also, when they pull out the chest, there's a bunch of these very dangerous lizards that Kate ended up dying to. Well, the lizards, they aren't biting the boys, and the adults end up finding them. They thought that the lizards would take care of it, but they don't. And so they're just like, what are we going to do? Because, they're like, I don't know how they're still alive. I don't understand. It's the answer why is the onions. The onions are the reason. But anyway, so they're just like, okay, this is really weird. And then all of a sudden the lawyer just kind of shows up and she's just like, get them out of there. I want them to go home. And so somehow they get them out of there, and the warden tries to take the chest from Stanley. And Zero is like, no, it's Stanley's because it has his name on it. Stanley Yelnats. And so they're just like, okay, great, it's his. Off we go. And Stanley's like, no. Zero has to come too. I'm not leaving Zero. And the girl's like, okay, whatever. The lawyer's like, okay, whatever. So they take Zero and they take Stanley, and as they're leaving, it starts to rain for the first time in hundreds of years at Camp Green Lake. Everybody's happy. And they find out that the doctor guy's a sham. Mr. Sir was on parole, and the whole institute of Camp Green Lake was a sham. And so the warden, Mr. Sir, and the doctor dude, they all get arrested. And then it flash forwards to the end. They end up opening the chest and they find things that are worth a lot of money, like old stocks and that kind of thing. So they divvy it up between Hector and Stanley's family. And Hector uses his money to hire private investigators to find his mom. They get reunited. Stanley's family, they move into this big house because they also have the money from the foot thing, and they have Sweet Feet himself be the spokesperson for this foot odor removal thing. So at the end, everybody's happy, and that's how it goes.
Mm-hmm.
I love this movie.
I forgot how many just stupid coincidences just kind of happen.
So where is the book different?
So it's a chest in the movie? They find a chest?
Yes.
Yeah, in the book it's a suitcase.
Okay.
Or is it more trunk-like? Because if it's more trunk-like, then
it is. Maybe trunk is the better word. Yes. Thank you for actually giving me the word of trunk to be oh, yes, that's...
The only reason I gave you that is because I have great-grandpa's trunk.
Yes.
Which was his suitcase.
Yes. So
that's why I said trunk. Hector's reunited with his mother.
Mm-hmm.
The book never mentions anything about the stocks or anything. It's just kind of he's just kind of reunited.
Yes. Oh, Pendanski, the doctor dude. His name is Dr. Pendanski. Because I made a note in my notes. Because one of the quotes is, "I respect you, Stanley." And it just, I don't know why. It just makes me laugh every single time.
Oy vey. Once Sam dies, it stops raining, hence why the lake dried up.
That's in there too. I just didn't really mention it to try to save time.
Honestly, everything else seems to be right. I know one thing you brought up was the song was different.
Yes. So I had started to read the book before Belle had said, "I'll take over reading the book again."
Oh, yeah, because I read the book in 7th grade.
Right. She said, "I'll take over reading the book again if you watch the movie." But before she said that, I had already gotten like 3 chapters in. And I looked at the song. You know, I read the song again that's in the book. And the way the song goes in the book, it's if only, the woodpecker sighs, the bark on the trees were a little bit softer, the wolf waits below, hungry and lonely, he cries to the moon, if only, if only. And in the movie, they tweak it a little. And it's if only, the woodpecker sighs, bark on the tree was as soft as the skies, the wolf waits below, hungry and lonely, cries to the moon, if only, if only. So it's not a big change, but it is there. And I found that very interesting. I don't know if they were just trying to get it to rhyme instead, because it is kind of clunky in the book. I think that might be why, to be honest, but it's not a big difference. And I think that's honestly, this book and movie are probably some of the most similar. I know the only other difference is that they said that Stanley was like a bigger kid. He was a little bit on the heavier side. Shia LaBeouf is not was not a heavy kid in this. So I think there's little tweaks like that. But I don't think there's anything like...
I think it's just kind of fine detail points.
Yeah. And I mean, honestly, these little details, or at least these 2 that I just know from the beginning of the book, they're not life or death. You know what I mean? They're just little bits. It's not much of anything.
Yeah, I don't think they greatly impact anything. I think it's just the little pieces of things. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like I said, it's only little bits and pieces. It's not anything major. And that's why I actually think I really love both the book and the movie, because this is probably some of the closest adaptations that at least we've covered.
Yes.
All right. Well, I think that about does it for this book to movie comparison. Of course, we want to thank you for coming along as I just kind of gushed about Holes and how much I love the story, because it is a good story. It really is. I know for you, Miss Logic Minded, you're there's a lot of coincidences.
I never really picked that out in the book, so I don't know why now I'm just wow, a lot of things just happen to just kind of coincide.
Yeah. But thank you guys for coming along today. If you like this episode, if you like what you've been listening to, please consider sharing the episode with your friends and following the podcast. It really would help us to grow the show, and we would appreciate the support those actions would give. But we're not asking you to go out and make friends. Now, what are we going to be talking about next time?
DNF books.
DNF books. Okay. We will see you guys next time then.
Bye.